I see 34 participants. That's amazing. It's 6:30, Megan. Should we get started?
Yeah, that's fine. There's still quite a few people that aren't in yet, but I can check them in as they come in.
Okay, that sounds great. So thank you all for being here tonight. If any of you have ever called 911 or called a first responder for help, you know that sense of relief you feel when you've got someone on the other end of the phone that understands what's going on, that is efficient, that gets your information and gets help sent your way. And really, when we think about what everybody's been through in this valley over the last couple of the years, having someone on the other end of that line that knows animals, that understands the bond, and that wants to fix that problem, that's a huge responsibility, but it also gives you all a huge impact on how people handle the disasters. So Hotline is sort of the front of the house. It's how we put people at ease and then alert the rest of the team what the need is. We have kind of a packed schedule tonight, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And we'll go ahead and
There's a whole bunch of people. I couldn't see them over by that door.
Huh, I'm not seeing it. Cool. All right, hold on one sec. Well, Megan, I am not seeing the, I'm going to close that down. I'm not seeing the,
I'm looking for the options. I don't know why it wouldn't be there.
all right, why don't you keep everybody chatting? And
I see, I have a screen share option, so if you don't, I can.
Yes, see if you can get your the presentation up. For some reason, it's not doing that on my side.
Okay, let me see.
It's always fun. I call Zoom 51st dates. It every time is different. There we go. All right.
Now I think I anticipated this because, you know, so I've got it pulled up.
Okay, I did too, but here we go. So tonight, I think I can advance it, or actually, Megan, will you advance that?
Yes.
Okay, you're in the right place if you are interested in hotline training tonight. And the way we're going to do tonight is we're going to spend about a half hour going over some of the basic skills that we're hoping to teach you. And then right around 7 o'clock, Trevor Skaggs from the North Valley Animal Disaster Group is going to join us, and he is going to give us an overview of Shelterly. And then at the end of the meeting, we will have an opportunity to test our WhatsApp call out so that we have a hotline specific WhatsApp for the oncoming disaster season. And then we'll have a little sort of homework project where you will group up with someone else on this training tonight and actually go through calling each other and providing information to enter into Shelterly. And that way you can learn it. You'll have some credentials. If you hit any snags, you can let us know. We're very lucky at Napa CART to be one of the beta testers for Shelterly. So it's amazing, and it's still in the works. And so Trevor is very open to the even better yets if we find things that are not functioning the way we need them to. Next slide. Okay, and remember, one thing that we all have working for us right now is that the last significant fires, the last 4 significant fires, all occurred on red flag days. So the good news about our ability to spool you all up is that we usually get a notification from the county about a weather pattern or the prediction of a red flag, and then we try and push that information out to you with 3 stages. Initially, we have an alert, then we have a prepare, and then we have a deploy. So you will often have enough time to get your materials together and review some of the protocols that we're going to teach tonight. Next slide. So again, one of our goals for tonight is to have a broadcast group on WhatsApp, and hopefully most of you had an opportunity to download WhatsApp. There are some safety concerns about the security and privacy of information on WhatsApp, so we are going to use it specifically as a call out. We are not going to share sensitive data, but in the last 4 fires that we've had, WhatsApp has been the only app that has held up to our loss of cell towers and infrastructure. So until we find a better alternative, we're going to go with that. When we have a disaster such as the glass fire, county called me at 6:40 in the morning. I then reach out to our leadership and advisory board, let them know what's going on. If there's a call for evacuation, there'll be a hauling nixle that goes out. So those of you that have done trailer certification also will get a message. And then most importantly for tonight, those of you that are on hotline, we would send you a WhatsApp and we would either start funneling calls directly to your number or we would do it through Ring Central. And we'll talk a little bit more about that at the end. Next slide. And remember that when people are calling the hotline, they're usually either calling for evacuation or they're calling for shelter in place. And some of our amazing volunteers here who are on the training tonight realize that in the beginning stages of a disaster, it's all evacuation. It's usually too dangerous to go behind the fire lines and shelter anything in place. So we're either going with county escort or we're going with our amazing CERT teams, communication assistance, and we're getting animals out. It's usually a couple days in that shelter in place begins. And then when shelter in place, oftentimes our teams are going to visit every other day. So when you get a call from somebody and they are saying, I need you to check my animal, one of the boxes you're going to see tonight is when was the animal last seen? When you send that request for animal services over to dispatch, dispatch is going to look at when the animal was last seen, and then they're going to plan for when we see the animal next. So you can tell the caller on the line, this is our protocol. We usually send out our teams every other day. The team will call you before they go, and they will call you with an update after. Is this the best cell phone for us to use? And that way the caller understands what the actual process is. And you can say, if you haven't heard from anybody in 48 hours, call me back. And that way, in the rare chance that we don't get an RFA come through, that person knows that they can call back. Next slide. And then when we have you come in for hotline, we're going to have you set up your workstation. And so there's some key things here, which we all know, is that remember to just be the calming voice, thorough, kind. Make sure you're taking your data down and neatly and double checking it. And you'll see with Shelterly, you can input it directly into the app. And then you're keeping a log and notifying dispatch. And Lisa Ragone, who is our hotline lead, will go over this in a little bit more detail. At the end of your shift, you will make sure that you are briefing whoever your oncoming operator is, and you're going to send over your dispatch log to, or sorry, your hotline log to the dispatch operator so that they can double check that they have accounted for every RFA that has come through. Next slide. All right, Megan. Oh, actually, Lisa was going to go ahead and give us a account of a call that she had this summer that left an impact on her, just to give you a little bit of a feel for what those calls can sound like. Lisa, go ahead.
Great. Okay. This past summer was the first time I was a hotline operator. I kind of was learning trial by error, and I learned a lot. And one of the calls that impacted me the most was this woman that called in. And as soon as I said, as soon as I finished saying, this is Lisa, Napa CART, this is Lisa, in a very long sentence, no pauses, She was excited and agitated, and this is what I heard. I am elderly. I live alone. I have 2 horses. I see the fire. There's orange flames coming over the hill towards the barn. I can't load my horses. I cannot load my horses, and I will not leave them. I will not leave them or my property until they are safe. And she continued, will you come out and help us? Come out, please, hurry. I cannot load my horses. They're agitated. It's coming. The fire's coming. She paused, and I'm waiting. Was there more? No. Now it's my turn. Ma'am, are you safe? Are you safe? Yes, for now. Is there a neighbor to help you load your horses? No. Is there a family member you can call to help you? No. I live alone. There's nobody. Ma'am, do you have a field or pasture? Yes. She responded, okay, release them into the field. Release them into the pasture. No, I am taking them with me. Ma'am, your safety is utmost. You need to get out of there before the fire comes any closer. I will when I can get my horses. Ma'am, can you still see the flames? Yes. Okay, they're only going to get closer. It will not be safe for me to send a team up there to get your horses if you can see a fire. They are not allowed to go where there is a fire. Can you give me some information about your animals? I will take this all down and I will forward it to the team that needs it. And we will get your horses as soon as it's safe. I'm not leaving. She kept repeating that. And finally, I just had to tell her, ma'am, at this point, it is unfortunately too dangerous for us to go up there. Please give us the information I need to get your animals safe, shelter, as soon as it's safe for our team. We will get them, or we will look after them and feed them. So let's start getting the information so I can pass it on. And she took a deep breath, she calmed down, she gave me the information I needed. As each question I asked her, she got a little calmer. And finally, the situation resolved. She decided she needed to get out of there and leave her horses. As far as I know, she left them out in the pasture. And I didn't hear from her again, so I only assumed the teams went and got them or sheltered them in place. Kind of traumatic to hear all this in a matter of minutes. And I'm sitting there going, now what do I do? Okay, what questions do I need to ask her? Get the form filled out. Get that form filled out so you can get it forwarded.
So that's a great example, Lisa. There will be calls where you have somebody that's in harm's way, and it's always the right thing to do to prioritize human safety and reassure them that animals are resilient if they have room to move. And you will often have a hotline leader, and if you find yourself on a call where you don't know the answer or you don't know the right advice, it's okay to say, listen, I'm going to read this number back to you. I'm going to get some information and I'll call you right back. It's okay to do that. And then to reach out to a leader or to somebody with some of the evacuation experience and get some advice. So that's a very good example, Lisa, of what you might face. Megan, do you want to go ahead and talk a little bit about some of the phone skills that we're looking for?
Of course.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm Megan Van Kuchen, and I'm the operations manager for Napa CART. And similar to Lisa, this past summer, I found myself doing hotline, even though I wasn't fully trained. I mean, I knew some of the ins and outs of hotline, but hadn't had the experience to be able to go through some hotline training. But Lisa and I and a lot of other good team members figured it out, and we got a lot of calls answered. So I'm going to share, some of the things that I learned and some of the things that we've worked on in hotline to make it smoother for people that might help us in this area. So before you start, you definitely want to make sure you have supplies ready. Due to COVID this year, or this past fire season, I was primarily working from home. Lisa was working from home. A lot of our operators were working from home. So it's just important to find like a quiet area, have everything out that you think you might need, so that when you're on a call, you can minimize fumbling and looking around for supplies. We will hopefully be using Shelterly going forward. So, make sure that you're logged into Shelterly and kind of know your way around it before you start your shift. Make sure your equipment, your phone, your computer, anything like that is plugged in or has a power source nearby, because these shifts can be long and you can be on the phone constantly and might be draining your battery. And then we always want to make sure you're taking care of yourself. So make sure you have, some water and snacks and anything like that nearby. Because again, they're long shifts and the phone's ringing constantly, and there might not be, a lot of time for a bunch of breaks. So that's kind of before you start. During the time when you're on the phone and answering, we do always start the calls with Napa CART. This is Megan, so people know who they're talking to and can start to connect with you that way. Very important that you ask if they're safe. We, as Lisa, experienced with that call and other calls that we had, some people have fire right there, or, other dangers. And so we want to make sure that they're safe, number one, but then also that we're getting them the help that they need. If they've got fire right there, likely our volunteers can't get to them. So that might be a call that needs to be redirected to sheriff's dispatch, or another entity that can work a little closer in the fire proximity. We will, during each incident, and it kind of changes throughout the incident, but we have a list of numbers and contacts for you. So if you need to direct someone to sheriff's dispatch, we'll have that number provided for you. And another thing, I don't think I actually have it as a bullet point here, but something else I thought of is there's often, these fires don't stay just within one county. They might spread to different counties. And so it is important to ask where they're calling from, because it might not be our jurisdiction. I had people call from Sonoma County. I had people call from Solano County in the last couple fires, and those calls need to be rerouted elsewhere. As Lisa described with that phone call, people are frantic and worried and scared. And so the more that you can use a calm, pleasant, reassuring voice, it just gives them that sense of, help is on the way and reassurance. And it's important not to sound too hurried, stressed, or frustrated. It's hard work doing hotline, but just try to keep yourself calm, and then it helps the person that you're talking to. Definitely, try to minimize distractions around you. Often I like to listen to the scanner on our radios, but when I was taking a call, I'd turn the scanner off because I don't want that in the background. But you want all your focus to be on the caller. If people have a tendency to speak very, rapidly when they're giving you all their information, but just try to speak slowly, and the caller will start to mimic that. And feel free to, ask questions and repeat. So if they give you their information, they give you their phone number, you want to repeat that number back to them and make sure that you have the correct number. And once they get the address, repeat that back to them. It's very important that we get all these details correct so that when we send our teams out, we're sending them to the right places and we have contact numbers to use. I do feel like, you know, some people like to give a little background and stories and anecdotes, and I felt like that was actually really helpful. So if you can take the time to listen to those stories, find out the animals' nicknames, find out some of the behaviors of the animals, and that'll help our teams when they're going out to look for these animals. It's nice to know that. And then because people are stressed and panicked and looking for us for help, we want to avoid using negative words. So, you know, try not to say, oh, we can't do that, or we won't do that, or, you know, that's not something we do, or we're too busy. Instead, if you try to focus on what we can do. So, you know, if we can't get out to them because there's fire right there, say, let me take your information. I'm going to get you connected with Sheriff's Dispatch and we'll work on getting someone out there for you. And then let them know, you know, what to expect of us, what we can. I just want to make sure to review the form, you know, take a moment, read through everything again while everything's fresh on your mind and look for any edits. Make sure you have clear directions so that when you're sending this form or entering things into Shelterly, when it's going on to the dispatch teams, you want to make sure like the directions to a property make sense. Because technology is nice, a lot of callers actually had pictures of their animals that they were able to send us. And so often I would take all the information down on our form, have the caller send a picture into us, and then I would attach the form and pictures to an email that I would send to the dispatch team. So that's really helpful, you know, when ASAR groups are looking for these animals to have pictures.
And Megan, just chiming in, when we work on Shelterly, you'll see that Shelterly actually gives you the option to upload pictures right into that database. So that'll be helpful.
Yeah, very, very exciting to implement Shelterly. We didn't have that in this past fire, so I'm just kind of speaking off our previous experience, but we're really looking forward to Shelterly and what that can do for us and how it can streamline. In the past, what we did is we would take this information and email it to a list of people that were part of the command center and part of the dispatch. And up there, you can see there's a couple default emails for people that are part of that team. And then lastly, the RFAS forms that are completed can then be transferred onto a log summary. So everybody can look back and, you know, make sure that we're capturing all the RFASs that we need to. I think that's it for my part.
Yep, beautiful. And then we've got about 10 minutes, Lisa, or not quite, to go over some of the forms and maybe focus primarily on your RFAS and your hotline register, because Trevor will go over the other things, and realize that our current paper RFAS is mirrored on Shelterly, but it's still helpful to be able to fill that RFAS out in a case where if Shelterly's down or if something else is going on, then you have that option. So we want to train on both methods so that we can always have a paper backup to what we're doing. Okay, go ahead, Lisa. Megan, I think you can advance the slide.
Okay. I first want to touch on the 214 because they have to be filled out by hotline, even if you don't leave your home. It is part of the forms. So of course you fill out your 214, and then because I had multiple shifts, I was able to put the start and end date. I filled out the face form. Do you have the 214 here? I thought I saw it on the slide.
It may not be on here.
I don't know that it's on this slide.
Okay,
But I did
okay.
send one to everybody
Ahead
in
of
email. So.
Okay, so you just fill out the face sheet of it with the incident leader and your designator and all of that. And then I was able to, because the multiple shifts, I just put the date, a start time and an end time, and then totaled that time and kept the running log on the same piece of paper. So you don't have to do a new 214 for each shift you do. You can just like, see, run a list, date and the time and the amount of hours, and then send that off when you're all done. Just a little cheat sheet there. And then the register. That is so quite obvious. You put the date, you put the time, and it's all in military. And then the name of the contact. So that's the person that's calling. And you put their cell number and an alternate if they have it in the lines there. And then if there's a request for animal services, you check yes. And then any miscellaneous information under the notes, like 7 chickens, and then the address. You know, somebody called and said they needed our tax ID for a monetary donation. So that went in the notes. Yeah, another one, 3 cats, and then I put the name Simon, Pepper, and Ronnie are the name of the cats. And so then if they called a couple days later, I would have my register and I would be able to, okay, so they've called back. And this is what happened the first time, maybe referred to sheriffs or referred to Petaluma or referred. So I'd be able to tell them, hey, listen, I know, I'm glad you called back. I'm sorry someone hasn't spoken to you. I did forward your information to the sheriffs, but let me follow up. Or you can also follow up. So the notes are good for not only callbacks, but if someone perhaps misplaces an RFAS or the name that goes with that RFAS, it's right there on the hotline register. So that's a good resource for future calls. And did you want me to touch on the RFAS or not, Doc?
Yeah, maybe just touch on the key points that you feel really are important to get. I mean, we want them to look at all boxes, but there's some real key information in there.
Right. And the way that I look at the RFAS, of course, is you get the caller's name and find out if they're the owners. Because if they're not the owners, you have to fill out the reporting party section, get really good phone numbers for them, addresses if you can, and then skip down to the animals to be assisted. And the way I do this is I use the who, what, where, when, and how. Think about the who. Who's the owner? Who's the reporting party? Check those off, right? The what? What are the animals? Once you have all of those filled out, and if there's more than 5 animals that belong to this one particular person, you can just continue an RFAS. You don't have to fill in all the reporting party and owner name again. You just put page 1 of 2 or 2 of 2. So the what are the animals? The where is where are the animals? The where were they last seen? Very important for the shelter in place teams to know where they're going, where the animals are. And then the other one, the when, last seen. Okay. And then the how. How do we access your property? Is there a gate? Is it locked? Is there a combination? Do we have your permission to enter your property? Is it okay if we, unlock your gate? I mean, it sounds minute, but if we don't get this in advance, then somebody could always come back and say, well, you never asked me. So always ask, you know, how to open the gates. There was a duplex, a person was calling from, she lived in apartment A. And so I'm like, okay, so which side of the complex is A, left or right? Oh, it's the left side. Okay, so the gate is on the left side of your apartment. Yes. Okay, cool. I wrote all that down. That needs to go to the teams. Otherwise they're wandering around. Okay, well, there's an A and a B. We got A, but how do you get to the gate? Or some may not be as obvious to the shelter in place teams or me as a caller, because I don't know your property. I've never been there. What's the color of the house? I had a very interesting call about, it was up on Old Toll Road in Calistoga. Okay, I've only been there once. Scared the crap out of me. Narrow, windy. I have a big truck. It's like, no. Anyway, so I knew where that was. However, the caller was like, okay, you got to go up Old Toll Road, 2.8 miles. There's an old log barn. Next to this is a green mailbox with the numbers on it. And once you locate that, you have to look to the right. There's a driveway. Take that driveway to the fork in the road. Go right at the fork. There's a gate. There's a combination. Okay, thank you. I need this, because otherwise I would have been, our team's not going up there because I know Old Toll Road and we can't handle it. Hey, told me exactly where it was. And that's the kind of information that we as hotline operators need to get to give to the teams so that the teams can be successful. And that's what it takes.
Perfect. And one thing to remember too, a very important detail on that sheet. And again, you're going to learn about Shelterly, and then we're going to sort of talk about how do we use these two systems together, right? How do we keep our paper trail and work with Shelterly? And I'm sure Trevor will guide us a little bit on that. But one of the key pieces of information is, when was the animal last seen? And if you realize, if you're a horse person and you realize that that animal was last seen 3 days ago, well, that's a problem, right? That becomes a attention email to the dispatch. Hey, we've got a, you know, this animal was last seen 3 days ago. Don't know water status, don't know food. If that is a ruminant or something that has a little bit better ability to fend for itself, then that's less of an emergency. So that, when was the animal last seen, is actually a very important question. And then you make sure and alert the dispatch if you've got someone with an urgent request. You know, if that we didn't leave water or we couldn't or whatever, then we will prioritize those calls and realize that the dispatch teams may have already left for the day, but we have the ability, with the amazing assistance of CERT teams and ham radio, to radio a team that's in close proximity to wherever this new call was and add it on. So there are situations where you're going to get a call and that situation is not stable, or those animals haven't been seen, or there's a report that the animals may be burned. That is going to become a priority. And you just, when you email over to dispatch and say, I just sent over another RFA to Shelterly with your RFA number on it, make sure and note that this is time sensitive. Okay. We can take, go ahead, Alan.
Yeah, we have a question on the chat. Can you give other examples of where the hotline register would be filled out without a RFAS? Lisa mentioned donation. Are there other common situations?
I can,
Sure.
I'm happy to chime in on there.
Go for it, Megan.
We got a lot of calls for people volunteering, people that just call and say, hey, I've got a truck, just tell me where to show up. And so anything like that, I would write down. People that were calling for hay donations or other donations that could go to the shelter, I'd write that down and make sure I got that to, you know, the shelter people. We would get calls from Napa Dispatch that may or may not have turned into an RFAS, but you know, the Napa Dispatch might get an animal call and then they might call us. to complete that. So it's just a paper trail for basically any calls that you get. But a lot of volunteer calls, you know, people, this community is great in that when something happens, people show up and people call. And so it's nice to have, you know, someone calls and tells me any resources they have, I would write that down. You know, they have a truck, they have a trailer, or they have a water tender vehicle, or they have, you know, this or that. Just write it all down, because you never know, you might have to look back and call them up and use that, whatever they're offering.
Yeah, and I had a caller say, hey, I have a pasture and 5 paddocks, you know, available if you need them. So you'll get calls like that to people that just want to give of their resource, like Megan said, the resources that they have just to help. So.
All right. I think in the interest of time, save your questions. If they're in chat, we're tracking them. And we'll go ahead and introduce Trevor. And Megan, I think you'll have to share screen with Trevor as well, so that he can, you might have to come out of the, I'll come out of this, and then we may have to, sorry.
I think we got to make him a host.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Yeah. Do you see him on there? Trevor, you on here? There he
I
is.
see him here.
Yeah,
Co-host.
Beautiful.
Okay.
There we go. Give me 1 second while my machine catches up with us all. All right. Can you guys see me? Can you guys hear me?
We can. And Trevor, maybe give the group a little sort of introduction of this great work you've been doing, and tell us a little bit about your role in NAVDAC.
Absolutely. I'm going to move you guys over here so I'm actually looking at you. Perfect. And I'm going to share the screen here. All right. Can you guys see my slide deck?
Yes.
Awesome. So yeah, I have a little slide deck here. Some of you guys may know me from interacting with NAVDAG, you may not. So we'll go through just a quick overview of, there we go, intros and a project overview of where we came from, where we're going, all that good stuff, who am I, all those fun things we need to know. So first question, who am I? My name is Trevor Skaggs. I'm a member of Butte County Search and Rescue, as well as NAVDAG, the North Valley Animal Disaster Group. I like to show this picture off because people typically like to ask you, how did you get involved with animal rescue? And that's literally how I got involved. That's me with the awesome beard there, as you can see. It's kind of the style that I run with. And then that's my wife in the background. We were both members of Butte County Search and Rescue. During the campfire, we were going around looking for individuals that needed help up there. We found this fantastic goat named Kenny, and that's our friend there. And we decided to try to put him into a pen to make sure that he was nice and safe, because you can see there's water there, there was feed there. NAVDAG was actually servicing this location. We didn't know about NAVDAG. We just decided to try to get this goat to do things it didn't want to do. And clearly, I'm not a huge fan of horses, as you can tell by my body language in the picture. I've gotten better being around horse people. They've taught me how to do it. But that mare was not pleased about us being there. Other than that, as you can see on the left, what I do for a job is I have about 10 plus years of being a geospatial and scientific software developer. So that's what I do for a day job. I'm also a member and the Shelter Lead project manager for NAVDAG. I joined right after the campfire, so I've been a member for about 2 years. I'm also the training officer for Butte County Search and Rescue, and I've been with them for about 4. And most recently, I actually was the search manager for the repopulation and recovery effort from our fire last year, which was the North Complex West Fire. So overall, what are we trying to do here with Shelterly? So Shelterly came directly out of the campfire. Like I mentioned on the previous slide, I got involved with NAVDAG. So they asked me to come to a meeting to talk about how we could do things better. They rapidly astounded me with the amount and organizational system involved to manage an incident entirely with paper. And as a computer guy, it physically hurt my body. So we tried to come up with different ideas to maybe make this a little bit easier for everyone. When they sat down, they showed me a 4-inch 3-ring binder representing what I thought was the entire incident. It turns out there was 27 more of those that covered the 7,000 animals that they ended up sheltering during the campfire. So overall mission for Shelterly here came out of that conversation, and it's a system for tracking, managing, and caring for animals throughout the entire evacuation incident. So like tonight, we're talking about hotline. That's the very beginning, right? You guys gave some great examples of what a hotline call might be. You know, people that are having the worst day of their lives, calling and wanting to make sure their animals are safe. We need to get them into the system. That's where we start. We then carry them all the way through dispatching people out to get the animals. When they come back, we'll do intake, and then ultimately do the sheltering. And at the very end, hopefully reunification to get them back home with their owners. Some of the key objectives of our project were simple implementation and training. We realized that most of the people who are going to be using this are volunteers like myself. So we don't have, you know, years and days and hours to spend necessarily training. So we wanted to make something that was very simple and as intuitive as possible. Additionally, we wanted to keep it really, really low cost and low overhead so that a bunch of different organizations can use it. As Claudia mentioned earlier, we're doing a beta test right now, and we're doing it with 3 organizations for this first round to see how it does. Auto scalable as well as mobile compatible were some other components that we wanted to make sure, again, to be able to support as many organizations using Shelterly so that we can get out there and save some animal lives. High level, the project phases that we went through, we did some architecture. We've gone through hotline intake and dispatch were our primary focus for this original beta release. Tonight, we're going to kind of focus on hotline. I'll give you a little bit of the rest of what we're doing in there. But as you can see, we've made some good progress there. As you notice, we're at 95%. The cool part is that 5% is really going to be you guys using the application. And because you're the beta users, I want you to tell me what doesn't make sense, what doesn't work for you, what could be better. If you have a great idea, go ahead and let me know. That's where that 5% is really for. We're probably not really ever going to be fully done. So feel free, you're not going to hurt my feelings. We're doing this to make your guys' job easier and to make sure that we can save as many animals as possible at the end of the day. So if we can do that better, let's do it. Quick overview of the milestones for the project itself. So like I mentioned, we did that campfire retro, and project started back in 2019. And I kind of just took it into a closet and made a proof of concept by myself on nights and weekends for about 8 months. Came back and we said, yeah, I think we can do something with this. And we re-kicked off the project in April of 2020. That's where we've kind of really started the project itself. In fact, NAVDAG kind of provided some initial funding to allow us to go out and hire some developers that I'm managing to build this product for us. And then we've kind of gone through the various stages, as well as kicking off beta testing within NAVDAG late in January, earlier this year. All right, let's get into the demo time. So I just sent out an email to a large number of people. If you would like to check your email, you don't necessarily have to. You can follow along here, but it's going to give you the link directly. Actually, I forgot to put it on the slide, but we'll cheat in a second. Your username is going to be the email address that you actually received that email to. I'm hoping everyone's going to receive one. The emails came from Megan and Claudia, so they should be the ones that are used with your association with Napa CART. And then your password for this evening is going to be your last name with the number 1 at the end. And the important part is that the first letter in your last name is going to be capitalized, which is great. I gave you all the information on how to log in, but not where to. So let's go ahead and pop on over there. So that's not the one I need. So you guys are going to be going to napacart.shelterly.org. And I'm going to, there's a link in the email, but I'm going to put it in chat for everyone as well. If you just want, if you're more of a clicker like myself generally. You should be able to see that over in the chat window. You guys will see something that looks a lot more like this, hopefully. I'm gonna make this so I can see more beautiful faces over here. There we go.
And Trevor, I'll just chime in. You guys, if you want to log in and follow along logged in, you can. If you want to just listen and follow Trevor around on the screen tonight, you can. And we'll give you some instructions for a little project we're going to have you do after the fact. So either one is fine.
And if you are following along, feel free to click and add whatever data you want. You're not going to hurt it. This is a test system. So keep that in mind. If you want to save something, you want to put your house on the map, that's awesome. Go ahead and do it. But like Claudia was just mentioning, we are going to have a more organized demo or walkthrough that's kind of like how explicitly you guys are going to use Shelterly. Shelterly was designed so that a bunch of different organizations can use it in a variety of different ways. There's no right way to use Shelterly other than get the animals in early, go get them off the hill, get them into a shelter. That's how you use Shelterly, is get the animals safe. So if you guys are following along, if you're able to log in, we're not going to have a huge amount of time to troubleshoot logging in, but if you're able to get in there, you'll see something like this. Again, big caveat I want to apply is we're in beta, so we've done a lot of development. There's definitely bugs in here, and there's definitely additional functionality coming further down the road. So don't be surprised when you log into Shelterly and it's changed. Moving forward, you guys are always going to have a demonstration environment. It may not exactly be the address I gave you tonight. We're probably going to give you another one later on, but feel free to go and log into that demo one whenever you want and play around. I'll make sure Claudia knows when we do, somewhat major releases, so you can kind of go see what the new nifty things are. Quick overview of the UI. Obviously, you've kind of got some stuff on the left-hand side that allows you to kind of navigate in between the three major modules, which are Hotline, Dispatch, and Shelter. We're eventually going to be adding that reunification one we talked about, and probably some vet components in some capacity in here. So, but what we're talking about tonight is Hotline. So easy as clicking directly on Hotline right there. As you can see, it looks like somebody already entered data in here. You guys are very quick, or I already did that to test that the system worked. I don't know, I'll let you guys decide. So you're going to land on Hotline, and this is already giving you a heads up display of what our incident looks like. I'm not super familiar with your area, so I just kind of picked some addresses. This may not make sense, obviously. Right downtown Napa is probably a little bit less good, but it was easy for me to find addresses there. But this is giving you a heads up display of all the open service requests that are out there. And so you can use these little buttons here to click around and see if you have any that are assigned. If you see this blue map right now, a little bit of a bug, but it's basically telling you we don't have any that are currently assigned and we don't have any that are currently closed. At the same time, you can always go back to the all and it'll show you all of them. And they are color coded, and we'll get into that a little bit as we kind of progress through the system. You're able to hover over these as well if you'd like some additional detail. So they'll pop up, and this one tells you the address, one small dog, great. You'll notice some icons there in that tooltip. There's a little car on the far left and a little trailer. Those will come into play a little bit later, but those are things that we're going to have Hotline entering. The car means, is this property accessible by a Prius, right? Nice, obviously in the flats, that's a little bit easier, but as you start to get up in any kind of canyon or hill country, which you guys have as well, that's an important factor. And then that little trailer is going to indicate, is the property, are you able to turn around on that property? Similar over here, this one doesn't have any icons, so you don't have as much information. Over here, another small cat. If you click on these guys, it'll actually open that service request for you. And so you'll see, this is that service request, as I said, 123 Napa Vallejo Highway. Here's some of those icons you're kind of seeing again. So keep that in mind. We also have the owner information available, all of this good stuff. So I'm just going to give you a quick snapshot of what that looks like, but let's go ahead and generate one. All right. So to generate one, I'm going to go back into Hotline. And as you see here, here's your guys' bread and butter, mainly these top three. So the first thing as a Hotline member that you need to know is which type of person is calling me. Is it the owner calling me? Is it a non-owner calling me? Or is it a first responder calling me? And we're treating each of those a little bit different for some important reasons. Owner, obviously, we want to get a little bit more information and we want to make sure that the owner gets attached to that animal. So that's really useful. Non-owner, we're going to get a little bit less information and we're making sure that that person doesn't get attached as the owner. We really don't want that occurring. And first responder, pretty similar to non-owner calling. The only caveat we really have is we gather a little bit of information about what agency that they're calling from. That just gives us some way to kind of vet the validity of the data. we've all worked with PG&E guys who tell you that they saw a cat somewhere. But then if search and rescue calls you and tells you that they saw a cat at this latitude and longitude, that's pretty important differentiation there. So keep that in mind. So let's go right into an owner calling workflow. So if you click on that guy, it's going to drop you in at basically our owner entry form here. So as you notice, these little stars up here are going to indicate fields that are required. I'm going to point out right now that I kind of lied to you because this phone needs to have one that I just noticed while I was testing everything out. So the only thing that's really required on this page is first name, last name, and phone number. As you can see, as I click out of them, it'll tell you that. The rest of these are nice to haves, even including the address at the bottom. And I'll show you why in a minute, but I'm going to go ahead and put myself in here. Not my actual phone number, so no text messaging, please. Alternate phone number, always able to put that in there. Driver's license, this is information that we would ultimately like to get. Keep in mind, this is the first pass. So you're going to put this information, it's going to save it. You can change this information later because it's saved in a database. So don't worry about it. The objective in Hotline is to get the not as much, but the necessary amount of information as quickly as we can, right? You're going to have 30, 40 calls coming in an hour, maybe more, maybe less. We want you to be able to get that information in really quick. If you need to do follow-up later, that's why we require the phone number as one of the only required bits of information, is you could populate the rest of this later. The example you guys gave where that lady was like, I can see the fire, my horses are here. You'd be like, all right, what's your name? What's your phone number? What's your address? Drive away from your property. Your property's on fire, or let the horses out, as you mentioned, but your property's on fire. Get out of there. Email as well, just good bits of information to gather. This guy here this is really going to kind of help us figure out where, basically this is leveraging Google. So it's going to help us pick an actual correct and valid address. I'm sure we've all gotten a service request that says 123 Fat Log Road and it's Flat Hog Road, right? Those are very similar things, but one of them might actually be a real address and the other one might not be. So keep that in mind. As you type in here, it's going to suggest addresses to you just like you're on Google. Keep in mind as well here, it's using where you live, or not where you live, but where your computer is based to assist you. So I live in Chico, California, obviously associated to NAVDAG. So it's going to suggest Chico addresses to me. And it's going to go from Chico outwards. So as you guys type in addresses, you're going to get Napa addresses, unless you're not in Napa, which is obviously not a requirement, but keep that in mind, is that it is actually using your location. If you type out a full address, for instance, I can start to get to other locations. I don't actually know a road name out there. That's why all those places ended up on there. But you can actually type in a full address, and if you add the city and whatnot, say you are not in Napa currently, you can override that. So as you click that, on the right-hand side, you can see the little mini map that represents where that pin is. You can zoom out, get an idea and go, okay, yeah, that looks like roughly where I think it is. A feature that we've added recently that Claudia probably hasn't even seen yet, so surprise for Claudia, is an exciting thing. This probably isn't a great example, but let's say this is an industrial property and somebody has horses that are on the back out near these, let's call those railroad lines, right? What you can actually do is grab this pin and drop it over here. And so that allows you to keep the same address. So it's still the same street address, but now we have additional information about where those animals actually are. That might not make sense so much in the hotline workflow because you're not going to have time to say, you know, how many paces back from the western fence is it? But as people go out to the field and, you know, more in the case of shelter in place, we can always edit this exact location as well to keep that as up to date as possible so that the people go out in the field can do their job. So after you do that, you're going to go all the way to the bottom. You're going to go next step. This is going to take you to the animal entry form. Now, this form has quite a bit more information available, but again, if you notice, the little stars are the only things that are required. So the first thing you have to do is select a species. We are working on fleshing out the species, so you'll see additional species in the future, including livestock categories, and fowl, I believe, is something else that was recommended. For the meantime, we're going to go with a dog. As you noticed, then it's going to say size. We have gotten some feedback here, but this is what we're using currently. So small, medium, large, and giant. They're a little bit subjective, but that's what was recommended initially. We're probably going to go with weights. that probably makes a little more sense, but that's all right. And then the rest of this entire page is optional. It's good to get information if you can get it, but if you can't, and in the case of somebody driving by and seeing a dog, that's probably more likely if you're in the owner, they're probably going to be able to give you a primary color. Let's go with brindle and black. This field is free text, so you can type in whatever you need to. We decided not to make a drop down that was explicitly breed because it was very hard to agree what a breed was. And I also didn't want to just always have the entire list of AKC breeds in there. So this is where you can put in whatever additional information you want. So I'm going to use the dog that we actually rescued from the bear fire as my breed description here. So he looks like a Dutch Shepherd and a Pit Bull mix, brown toes. So free text again, however you want to put that information in there. If you're able to gather the animal's name, sex, age, oops, my guy was young, he was a puppy. Important factors here as well is the animal known to be aggressive? That allows us to do some marking of the animal later in the process, so we'll track that throughout. Are they fixed? Probably not as relevant for Hotline, but again, if they're able to give you that information, it could help us to do identification of the animal. Is the animal actually confined currently? That gives us some priority given, the current state of the fire, as well as injured. So injured is actually a really important one. So if you have an older or an injured animal that might be lame and can't escape themselves, that's information we really want to get because this actually pushes that service request to the top of the queue. It doesn't mean it's going to go next, but it's going to be right in the face of dispatch when they go into that scene. Lastly, effectively, we have the behavior notes section here. Not lastly, sorry. Second to lastly, it looks like. And then you also have this last scene field that Claudia was mentioning before. Click on it, it's going to bring up a nice little time selector. So you're not just trying to guess how to enter time in there. And he was last seen yesterday, and it was 11:35 a.m. Additional information. This section right here is not currently supposed to be showing, so sorry about that. This is for intake, and this allows you to, once the animal is brought in from the field, it's basically the same address field that we saw before. So this shouldn't be showing in Hotline, but if you ever come back to enter information about an animal later, it should be exposed. And again, that's the same case where, oops, that's quite a bit far away from our incident here, where you can also drag that pin, which is going to be a lot more useful for when somebody picks up a stray out in the field. So I'm going to go ahead to the bottom here. And at this point, you have two options. You can add another animal. Let's say that's not the only animal that you want to make. You click add another. It clears all this stuff out and you're ready to go. The other thing I will point out at the top, we have this workflow tracker, and it's showing you how far along in the process is and what you're currently doing. So right now we made one contact. That was the owner that we made at the beginning. We've made one animal. And say they say, oh, you know what? That animal's actually giant. He's not medium. You can click this little back button right here, and it's going to take you right back to that animal. And so now we can go, oh, okay, he was a giant dog. That's awesome. Go down, add another, and we're back in the spot again. So we're looking good. So we're able to go back and edit stuff in the middle if they have additional information. I'm not actually going to, now I have to because I'm on this page. I'm going to make a cat. It's just going to be small. Then I'm going to go to next step. So this is the last little step in creating a service request. So as a quick little recap, what we did is we made an owner, we made a dog, and then we made one cat. So we've got the owner, we've got the two animals created. This last page is about creating the service request itself, which kind of ties all those pieces together. I'm going to point out this little guy here. We've all shopped on Amazon and we do the shipping is same as billing address trick, right? That's what this button's basically doing. So if you uncheck this, this allows you to now change the location of where the service request needs to go. Right now, we're going to assume most of the time the owner that's calling, that's where their animals are. But in the case of horses, we know that's just not true, right? People have their horses at a completely different address than where they live. That allows us to do that here. So you can make adjustments and type in, I'm going to have to, I probably should have guessed real things. Let's go with that one. It's going to update the map. You're able to look around before you verify it. Now that person lived down here in American Canyon, but they've got their horses up here, right? makes a little bit more sense than having them down in American Canyon probably. Directions here, again, additional information about how to access the property, if there's any special conditions or hazards associated to it. And then this bottom part is gonna definitely be changing in the near future. We will be putting some liability stuff, but this is a rough hack for the time being. So ask for verbal permission to enter the property. Are they gonna provide you a key under the rock, all that good stuff. And then here's those two flags and icons that I indicated before. Is the property accessible and can I turn around in it? Not always gonna be relevant, but it's always good to get that information. Once you do that, you go finish and create service request. And it's gonna drop you back on a service request page. Unfortunately, I noticed a bug about 10 minutes ago and was vehemently trying to fix it quickly. So you notice that those two animals ended up not getting created. I already found the bug, pushed a hot fix, but I did not want to ruin the entire demo by retrying to pull code in the middle of the demo. So typically what you're gonna have is those two animals will be created right here. In the case that owner's like, oh no, I forgot I have a third animal. Let's go ahead and do that use case. So you're at this service request. We've got the right location. This is the Sonoma versus the American Canyon, as we noted. I'm gonna add an additional animal. It's gonna take you to that same page that looks just like before. They're gonna be like, well, yeah, the whole reason have all our animals out there is the horse. I'm an idiot, I forgot my horse. We're gonna go ahead and add a horse and save it. And now you can see that horse was actually added. So again, like I was iterating, at this point, we would actually have 3 animals. So that's my bad with the bug that resists there. But I do wanna take us, we're now back at where I showed you that overview, and now we've walked through the steps to create one of these. I do wanna point out, you're always able to use these little pencil icons to update any existing information. So I'm gonna click this one and you can see, that's gonna take us back in. We can update directions, go around back, something along those lines. You can go ahead, you can update the location. Like I mentioned, I can say, well, that's the street property, but actually the horses are back here. So let's go ahead and save that. And so now, can't see that the map is updated, but you can see the directions have been updated here. So that information all persists. Let's say we wanted to flesh out a little bit more about the owner. They've called back and they're in a safe place. You can click on this little clipboard, which will take you to the owner page. Again, now we're looking at the pencil icon. I do want to point out everything you can see is connected. So here's that horse that we made. Here's their actual address, which is American Canyon. And then here's their service request, which again is different. So that's nice that we can see that. We can come in here. Like I mentioned, we can edit the owner's information. For instance, here, now we can get the email. We can get I think that looks like a driver's license number. The only thing that is a little bit different than a lot of pages is that we actually ask you for a change reason on owner. And the reason we're doing that is this is one of the most sensitive fields in the entire database, right? If you're in here and you make a mistake here, we want to make sure we know why you were trying to change something. We are keeping a history of every action you do, so we can go back. If there is a mistake made, we can figure out what the mistakes were and try to roll them back. It's not super convenient, so let's try not to do that. But in this case, what we really are calling here is, say you think that dog's really cool and you would like to own that dog, and Claudia is now going to try to steal my dog. She's going to have to come in here and put a reason for why she's trying to steal my dog. No, the reason she's trying to change this. So it's just a little bit more of a reminder of like, hey, be cautious about this, because ultimately this is how we're tracking who owns each animal, right? So that's the idea there. So I'm not going to have her steal my dog. I'm going to keep my dog. Here's the history that I mentioned before. We keep a brief history of the different actions associated. This is just for you to be able to see on the front end. We keep a much more in-depth version on the back end, so we can do forensics and all that cool stuff. So the only other thing I'm going to point out here, it's not super relevant to, actually, I guess it is for Hotline. So say somebody comes back off the hill, they can't find this, that, and the other thing, and they've just said, hey, Hotline, can you take getting a hold of these people and finding out what the deal is? Did they go get their animals, whatever it is? If you come right here on the owner page, you can click this little telephone, and it's going to take you to this owner contact page. And this is just to make sure we're tracking when we talk to the owner again. So this is useful for evac as well. As they're coming off the hill, they're going to be creating some of these. But you just come in and you say, yep, I talked to them at 1700. I asked if they had got their own animals app. They said yes. Perfect. So that's just a way. Oh, that didn't show up there. Let's get it refreshed. There you go. So now you can see that little contact. These are editable as well. But again, just a nice little thing that we can keep track of. It's really going to be nice actually for Hotline to know, hey, did somebody already call these people? I don't know. Did you call them? Did you call them? I don't know. Let's ask Shelterly if we called them. Oh yeah, looks like we called them. Cool. Done with that task, right? So nice little easy things where when we did it on a piece of paper, right? You just like write it on the back of the RAS and then hope that somebody turns over the RAS, it can read your handwriting. As a computer guy, I have the handwriting with a toddler effectively, or maybe a doctor. I believe that's what I'm supposed to say. That's the more societally advantageous version of that. So any other things I want to point out here? The only other thing I'll show is these little clipboard icons will take you in and around wherever you need to go. I will take you to an animals details page right here. And so this is going to give you an overview of that animal specifically. Obviously, it's basically the same type of information. The owner's connected here. The service request is associated. You can come back and edit that animal, all those good things. This is a really simple version of the reunification. It makes it seem very easy. If I click this button, the animal's reunified. We didn't actually do any work, but I will set the status of the animal as reunified. So that's going to actually evolve quite a bit over time. The last thing I will show you, because she mentioned it specifically, was pictures. So I know this is a horse, but I did not prepare for the horse demo. So I can briefly. I think it's going there. Oh, somebody's trying to get into the meeting. I should probably admit them. Oops. Let's see. Yeah, it's going. Maybe not. Maybe I found another bug.
Oh, I see it.
Live demos. All right. We may have to skip that functionality for the time being because I didn't test it ahead of time. Let's see if it worked. It did not, but you were able to add multiple pictures. I will show you that basic functionality. So if you come in here, you can add pictures, and as you do that, you can add additional pictures. This is going to be really useful for shelter, so not specifically so much in Hotline. We have discussed the potential of exposing something similar to this to Hotline, where if people do text you a picture of their animal, we can attach it, but we do want to make sure those are separate categories. You know, data that we're generating versus data that the public is generating are very different things, different levels of trust that we want to associate. So you can basically end up having 5 images associated to an animal. And again, main focus is over there on the shelter side of the house. So
2 questions.
Yes.
One is people are asking, is Shelterly operable on a cell phone?
It should be. It's probably, some of the screens might be a little weird, but it will work because it's just a website. We are going to be optimizing for smaller screens. It works pretty well on tablets right now, but the cell phone screen is quite a bit smaller. We just need to make a couple of changes. Mainly this sidebar just needs to be able to go away in a lot of cases, and it'll work a lot better there.
Perfect.
I did play with it on my cell phone, practicing with it, Trevor, and it was a little wonky, but it worked.
The buttons will work. The buttons are just hard to find sometimes.
Yeah, you have to kind of scroll it around a little bit.
Yeah, in an emergency, obviously the intention is to use it generally more on a computer if possible, just because it's nice to have more real estate, but we will be working towards making sure it works at least decently well on a cell phone. It's still not going to probably be the preferred method. Tablets are probably going to be pretty common for operating it, so we'll definitely spend a lot more cycles making sure that it works well on tablets.
Second question was, if our goal while we beta test this is to maintain a paper trail, can a hotline operator print off a PDF of this or save a PDF before it's submitted? Is that an option at this time?
Of the service request?
Yep.
So it could be. Let's go to a service request page. Get it going here. Oh, cool. I think people are doing stuff. Good work. Good work, people. See, I can see all your work in here.
Excellent.
Extra credit. Actually, let's go look at the map. Sorry, I don't want to. I will answer your question, but I want to see now. Uh-oh, somebody made a boo-boo. That's all right. I usually, my developers work over here in New Hampshire and Vermont, so I usually have little ones over here. But that will also give you a good heads up that maybe somebody entered some interesting information. But let's just zoom into our area, and you can see, yeah, people are starting to enter some data. So that's kind of cool. You guys can see this is a shared platform. You guys were able to. We've been going, what, 26 minutes now, it looks like. You guys are already figuring it out. Easy peasy, that's the idea. Actual question. So let me open a service request. At any point, you can come in here and you can easily print this. I wouldn't say right now we have anything that's optimized for printing out as a paper record. That's definitely something we could consider. If I do this, obviously it's not gonna be the best. Again, similar to the cell phone output, but I could save that as a PDF right there, and that would get us at least somewhere. If that's something that has more value, definitely let me know, and we can put it on the roadmap. Part of Shelterly actually inherently does have a paper component, which may seem a little confusing, but with us just working with the people who do this work, we kind of came to the conclusion that it's evac, it's probably still going to be paper. Evac is going to work better as paper because now they don't have to worry about their phone running out of batteries. They don't have to worry about waiting long enough to sync up their data when they get back to the cell tower or forgetting completely and going home. We're going to have basically this triage process where there is a printable form that evac takes into the field. They put their marks on it. When they get back, intake takes that off their hands and they go rescue some more animals. Evac isn't even in this system. So some of the evac people may be, but typically evac won't be having to do any kind of data entry. We're trying to avoid that as much as possible.
I guess what I'm thinking about is if we say we take in an RFA and it's filled into Shelterly, and the hotline operator sends a little email to dispatch, and you guys will have all this information. When you sit down for your shift, you'll have the contact information for the sheriff. You'll have the contact for the other carts. You'll have who's on dispatch. We'll load you with that. But say I take the information to Shelterly and it goes in, and then I email dispatch and say, hey, I just sent over another RFA, and they say, we don't see it.
So yeah, you won't even really have to email them. So I'm at the dispatch map now.
Okay.
So this is the tool that dispatch uses, which is similar as you saw the map. So they'll be able to see all of the new service requests as they come in here.
Okay.
So that being said, if they say, hey, I don't see that one, if you guys do have that communication channel, they can easily come in here and look through the list. You as well, you can also check yourself from Hotline. So that's the last functionality in Hotline is this search service requests. So I'm going to pop that guy open and show you guys roughly how that kind of works. This is a tool that we're trying to make as slick as possible. So typically you're probably going to be searching for an address. I realize that. So I'm going to go ahead and do 123 Napa. There we go. There's the couple of different addresses that have 123 Napa in them. The other thing I want to show you is that it doesn't just work for that. So if you have an owner's name, actually I wasn't an owner, I was a reporter. Actually, no, I wasn't an owner. You can type in a bit of that. We also allow you to type in animal names. So you're able to search for whatever you need to find the service requests that you want here. So it might be a good idea. And as soon as you finish a hotline service request entry, you land on that service request page. And if you land here and you're seeing this isn't the one I made, but this somebody else made, your service request is made and dispatch already has it. Does that make sense?
It does, but I'm thinking, so, and bear with me, I'm a worst case scenario person because I live in Napa. So what if, say you go back to your information page or your initial owner page, your owner screen. So on this one, can you do that? And it would have that information. So I'm suggesting to this team that as a backup mechanism, you take a screenshot of this sheet. That way, if for some reason something happened, you would have the owner's contact name and information. If something happened and that request for some reason did not go where it needed to go, you would still have the ability to go back and call that person and refill out a request. Otherwise, I don't know how you would retrieve that information. And
Yeah,
again, this is worst case scenario, something goes glitchy with the internet.
Yeah, so you're saying getting all the way to,
Yeah, so that if you just, even if you just
you're
had
sitting
that,
right here and you're like, hey, all right, I'm good. Oh, that's Geo. And you click that and it failed.
yes.
So I guess the concern I would have is the only way, because it's spread across multiple pages, it would be hard for you guys to do that a little bit. So because each of these pages, but if it's just the owner information, that's not a bad idea. That's not a bad backup.
That's all we need, because we can always call them back and get the information again. But if we lose that, then we can't even call them or even create our log in some ways. So I'm just trying to think of a process that gives us that backup. We could write into our SOG that you just take a screenshot of that initial contact page, and that at least gets you that ability.
So, and I did look at your guys's contact or like radio log, not radio log, but contact log.
Yep.
That might be a good place where the first thing that we do is actually write down the owner's first, last name and phone number,
Yep.
and then start Shelterly. And then you don't have to worry about taking screenshots and trying to manage saving digital assets, because that's going to take 30, 40 seconds if you know what you're doing to do that potentially. So that might be an easy way to do it, is just, hi, this is Trevor with Napa CART. What is your name? Boom, 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 write it down. Then you already have this
Yep.
page ready to go. You just say, hold on 1 second, type it in, and now you're ready to go. That is probably a really good SOG, to be honest.
All right, that I'm game. I think that's a good way to go. Everyone get that? Looks like nod your head. Yeah. Okay.
We'll
Good.
email you about it later. It's fine.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think that I am about out of my originally allotted time. So that's a quick overview of the main hotline functionality. There's definitely more little cool stuff in there that I didn't show off, but I wanted to just cover the basics and let you guys go play with it. So I know you guys are going to do an additional exercise. I am going to ask you guys to wait until probably tomorrow, because we're going to try to fix that bug with the animal not being created initially. I have the code sitting on my machine, so we're going to push it up later this evening, but I will make sure to email Claudia, and Claudia can let everyone else know that you're good to go. Like I mentioned at the beginning, feel free to do whatever you guys want in here. You're not going to break it. In fact, well, you might break it, but that's the point, I guess, is more so is what I'd like to say. So keep that in mind. Try to do different things. Just start to get familiar with it. If you guys have any questions, you'll be able to, I think I have.
There's one question that came in, Trevor, just now. If from a service request details page, how do you go back?
So from here, how do you go back to where?
Let's see. Maybe to add another animal or to add some additional information?
So from a given service request page, you can always edit the service request itself. And this is where it's going to be a little bit different. So we think of RASs as the entire piece of paper that has all the information. The reason I'm not calling them a request for service, and we're kind of like using this pseudo term that's near it, is that the service request, all it really is in this instance is a location, some directions, and some attributes of that property. So if you want to update the location of the service request or the directions, you would come into this little pencil. If you want to update anything about an animal, you would go to the animals page specifically and edit that animal's information. And then similarly, if you were interested in updating the owner's information, you would go to the owner's page over here and update the owner themselves. So think of them as three separate types of objects as opposed to one that connects them all. In this case, they're still obviously all connected, but you need to ask the question of what information am I trying to change? Is it about the owner? Is it about the animal? Or is it about the location where the animals are?
And then is this assigning a number? Is there a number on here somewhere for the request?
So yes, each request has its own number. It's up here in the URL right now. We've decided not to call them numbers because at least we typically refer to them by addresses, but there's no harm in calling it service request 15. It's just you're probably going to have to go look up what service request 15 is. So it's a little bit less valuable, at least in our opinion. Animals are going to have an exposed number. In fact, we have a ticket that's ready to merge this week. So each animal similarly has a unique number that's in the URL, but we're going to expose it all over the page for explicitly this reason is we have an unknown set of 5 medium dogs. It's real hard to tell them apart unless this is 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Yeah.
And those will be unique across the entire instance of Shelterly. So it's a bit different than an intake number that we use now in that it'll always be unique by definition. So this could be 1, this could be 7, this could be 10. They don't necessarily have to be in order either. It's whenever they were created. And they're not just unique in the context of a service or even a shelter location. They're unique inside the entire incident. I just remembered one additional feature that I forgot to highlight, and I do want to show you guys. So I'm going to go through the non-owner calling. I'm sure you guys have clicked through it, but as you can see, slightly less information. Let's go with Jim. J. Merce. So that's a real name. Obviously, in Northern California bias, I keep using my area code. Sorry about that. In the non-reporter, I did want to show you guys, you can actually add the owner. So if you do know the owner, that's a potential workflow. Say somebody's calling for their aunt who had to just run out of the hills. And now I'm calling as the nephew, you know, my aunt is up there. So you can do that. That'll just drop you into that normal owner information page. But I want to get to the animal. The other thing I did want to show you is let's go with, and I think you guys have this problem too. Chickens. Do you guys have chickens?
Yes.
Yeah. So not a lot of people have 1 chicken. It turns out it's not a common number of chickens to have, I don't believe. So I'm going to call out this little functionality here on the right. This is the number of animals, and this is our magic cloning device. So let's assume you want 60 chickens, which is a much more reasonable number of chickens to have if you're a chicken fan. Set that to 60. Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to work right now because of that bug, but I'm going to try it. I'll put this up in Chico just because. Let's see what it does. So let's do it from the other way that I know will work. It's similarly exposed whenever you're adding an animal here. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to have a bunch of small chickens. Realize that any field you populate here is going to be replicated to that chicken. So don't try to like individualize it and then make 60 of them, but keep that in mind as you can do this. I'm going to save that. And it's going to go and make us a bunch of chickens. Uh-oh, here they come. There they are. Ah, glorious, glorious chickens. So keep that in mind. We want to track as much as possible each individual animal. You don't have to do it this way though. I do realize that operationally you may want to do it differently. Chickens are a very special use case where it may go either way. The other way to do that, that we've discussed, is to do something like this. That also solves the problem, especially if you're going to keep them all together. But keep that in mind. We'd prefer to track each animal individually, but if that becomes unwieldy or unnecessary, you have the option to do it either way. So feel free to use that guy up there. By default, it's going to just make 1, which is, you know, the normal number, but definitely Hotline told me that immediately when we started demoing it. They're like, what if there's like 40 animals? And I was like, 40? Who has 40 animals? And then they mentioned chickens, so perfect.
Yes, we experienced that. In the glass fire, we saw more chickens than we ever even knew existed. So
yep.
All right. I think what we'll do, any questions for that haven't come through the chat? I think we've been reporting the majority of the questions. There are some people who didn't have their credentials, and we'll work with Trevor to get some additional credentials for those people. Yep. And then we do have a little exercise for you guys to do after the training that I can go into now, unless there's anything else for the chat for Trevor before we let him go.
And if you guys want to chat about Shelterly or have any things you like, don't like, all that good stuff, you can email me at trevor@navdag.org, and that'll go to me. I emailed a lot of you from not that email address, so it'll go there too. So skags.trevor@gmail.com. That one's just harder to spell and not on the screen right now. So your choice. They all go to the same inbox.
Excellent. Well, Trevor, we can't thank you enough, and we will play with this, and we'll kind of have everybody on this training tonight make a phone call to another volunteer on the training, and you're going to give your information, and then they're going to call you, and they're going to give you information, and we're going to actually have you real-time input so that you can play with this a little bit.
Awesome.
Thanks again, Trevor, and I'll be in touch.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Good
Have
work.
a good one. See ya.
Bye-bye.
Uh-oh.
So we have a few more minutes here. And again, if there were some of you that did not get your credentials, feel free to email us at info@napacart.org, and then we can work on getting some additional credentials for you. As I said before, what I think we're going to do, Megan and I will go over this roster here. We've got 43 people on the call. We'll probably pair you up with somebody if you're comfortable with that, and we will go ahead and email you the phone number of your teammate. And again, if anybody's uncomfortable with this format and don't want their phone number shared, you just got to email us at info@napacart. Let us know. We're happy to not do that. But it'll allow a more realistic situation, which is that you're going to be on the phone with someone. If you're copying data off of an RFAS that exists, that's not the same experience. And what we'll have you do is log into Shelterly, and we can, in our email, we'll go back through all that information for you, and then have you receive that call, schedule a call with the other volunteer. It might be somebody you know, it might be somebody you don't know. Either way, we're all one team, so it'd be good for you to meet additional members here, and then go through that process of entering your own animals into our Shelterly demo. And this is a demo part of it. If we were to have an incident in Napa tomorrow, we would have a actual incident aspect of Shelterly, which would be a little different. And again, as Trevor said, the login information may change, and we would keep you appraised of that. I do think that the added step of writing the owner's initial information on the log first is probably going to be key, because as you can see, we're still experiencing some glitchiness with the app, and it's going to take a little time for it to work. And that way we have a safeguard that if for some reason the information doesn't transfer, then we can get it there. One really cool aspect of Shelterly that we didn't even talk about tonight is that it is real time. So as you're entering in your information from Hotline, dispatch is seeing those pop up, and then dispatch is working on organizing where to go and with what urgency. But those animals, once they're evacuated or handled by our teams, then they can be pulled out of that evacuation area into the shelters. So all their information will already be in there, and then those that are in using Shelterly at the shelters can actually pull the animal out of that evac area and put it in the shelter. So it really does save a lot of time and work for us. And we're very excited to be beta testing it. Megan, do you want to do a WhatsApp? Do you think it's a good time to do that?
Sure, I've got, I believe I have everybody plugged into a little WhatsApp group, hotline group. So I'll go ahead and send something out, and I guess, are we okay with people responding back? It's going to ping everybody if everybody responds back.
It'll ping everybody, but you can, in the reaction screen, you can also put a thumbs up if you received it. And then if there's anybody that didn't receive it, they can let us know by email, and then we can make sure that we get them.
Perfect.
So why don't you do a thumbs up? On the lower toolbar, you'll see there's a reactions icon. And if you get it, the WhatsApp here, go ahead and put a thumbs up.
And while we're waiting for that, I just want to thank everybody for sitting in on this. I'm so happy to have so many names and faces associated with Hotline, because we need a deep pool of people when the fire hits. We run 24 hours. So I need help, and I appreciate it all.
Yeah, this is exciting. I'm seeing a lot of thumbs up. So those of you that are on this, if we needed hotline help, you would get this alert. There would also be something on Facebook that we need volunteers to check in, and there would also probably be something in email. On red flag days, what we'll often do is send out a little check-in and say, we are on standby. Please indicate your availability. And WhatsApp is another area where you can do that. However, we try and keep chat down and just use it for that purpose. Otherwise, as you can imagine, people get pinged all day. If you guys wanted to create your own hotline, we'd have to give it a name. You could have your own hotline chat, but we don't want it to be the main call out. That is strictly sort of business. Yes, I'm here and I can go to work kind of thing, if that makes sense. Sounds good. And then on our slide deck, Megan, if you share screen one more time, we did have a proposed date to do a little bit of a drill. It would give you guys about a month to check in with your the person that we assign you to a hotline call with. And then we thought that maybe on Thursday, April 15th, which is tax day, maybe, I don't know if it's actually tax day or if that's deferred, this same time, that we could then actually do a drill where we have you where we basically activate you guys and then start to do a couple phone calls and just see how Shelterly is going to work for all of us ahead of the fire season.
Hey, Claudia.
Yes.
Just for what it's worth, you're probably already aware, but there's a NAVDAG training that night.
I am not aware of that. Okay, that's my bad. All right, I'll look more closely at that schedule and we could come up with another day that will work. But I do think it's important to put these skills to the test while it's still fresh in our mind and we can work the bugs. So thank you, Lisa, for alerting me to that. And I see there's a couple of you out there that are having trouble logging into Shelterly. If that's the case, just send us an email at info@napacart.org and then we can see if we can figure out what the issue is. Anything else, Megan or Lisa, that you want to go through?
No, I think we covered just about everything.
Yeah, no, I'm happy that we have a lot of people interested in hotline. So,
well, and what's really exciting with Shelterly, guys, is if NAVDAG has a giant event, they can ask us to do their hotline while they spool things up and vice versa. So we can be more helpful to our neighbors if we're all using the same system. We can totally populate that map in Chico from here in Napa and vice versa. So I think it gives us an opportunity for mutual aid, but also to really have a good ability to retrieve calls. What do we have, Megan? 340 hotline calls, somewhere around that.
Yeah, I was somewhere around there. Yeah.
And I believe during the campfire, NAVDAG had thousands of calls. We would not have been able to stand up to that as of last year, but looking at the sea of faces on this training, we might be able to stand up to that this year. And I guess the last point, and it came up in the chat, is that we do have the ability with our Napa CART phone to call forward. That being said, if we had a large incident where we needed multiple operators, we are subscribed to Ring Central, and we do have a mechanism to get all of you preloaded into Ring Central so that we could actually call forward to 15 or 20 operators if we needed to do that. So you will receive an email from us that is, it'll ask you to log on to Ring Central and input your information. We have to do something on the administrative side first, and then you'll get that email, and we'll send you a little WhatsApp just so that you know when that's coming out. But that'll happen in the next month or so that we are prepared for a large scale response as well.
Hey, Claudia,
Yes.
I seem to have been bumped off of WhatsApp for some reason.
Huh.
Well, I saw that.
This is not the first time that I've been bumped off of WhatsApp. It's happened several times, actually.
I'm not sure what that's about, Alan, but we can try and work on that offline and figure that out. And again, anybody who's having trouble, if you email us at info@, we can try and work that problem. WhatsApp can be a little bit persnickety sometimes. All right. I think that looks like there's a few more questions in the chat. I'm trying to honor everybody's time tonight. Let's see. Okay. Looks like most of this, I do have this recorded and I will send it out. I see that NAVDAG is every third Thursday of the month. All right, well, thanks all. I really appreciate everybody being here. This is kind of a new frontier for us, but I think it looks really promising. And thanks for being willing to help when people need help. It's a very important role in Napa CART. And I think unless there's anything else, have a good night. Thanks again.
There was somebody that just asked, what are we officially calling the RFAS?
I believe it's still the RFAS until proven otherwise.
That's what it is.
I think some people are, if you're talking, are just calling it a RAS instead of
You
an
can call it
RFA.
a RAS in the field, but from the hotline perspective, it's an RFAS.
Yeah, we'll stick with that lingo. It's a tongue twister, but it serves a good purpose. All right. We'll
Thanks, guys.
have a good night, everyone. Thank you so much.
Good night.
Good night.
Night.